Good morning, everyone. That was a great response. Okay, are we all awake yet? So there's still quite a few people in the hall, so I'm going to wait till the other sessions fill up so I get the overflow, and then we'll start in a couple of minutes. But let's get you guys warmed up. You're in the right session, right? So Aussie Indie to 100 million players globally. This talk is actually going to be, it's going to be more about marketing and how to promote your game, how to create a global brand. So if you're here expecting a technical session, wrong session again. Right? So how many of you are actually indie developers? Show of hands. Good. We got the right audience. And you're all locals? You're all Australian? Anyone not from Australia here? Okay, we got quite a few that are from overseas, but yeah, you don't need to be an Aussie Indie to be in this session. It's applicable for all nationalities. We do not discriminate in this session. So why don't we get started? We're a couple of minutes early. I think we still got a few people rolling in. How many of people have heard of Yodel One? Do you kind of know who we are? Okay, cool. So I'm Henry. I'm the founder and CEO of Yodel One. We've kind of been doing this for a few years. We were founded back in late 2011. And we've had the opportunity to work with some very, very, very talented indie developers in the past. A lot of them are from Australia. And today, as I go through some of the topics in this session, we're going to spend a lot of time highlighting some of the case studies, right? So, end up working with these small but very talented Australian indie teams, and how we kind of work together to grow their games into global brands that have broken the 100 million user mark over the last few years. So with that, let's get going. Bit of background about myself. I'm actually Australian. I don't live in Australia anymore, but I grew up in a little country town called Yarrawonga. Who's been there? 3 people, 4 people. That's about the population of Yarrawonga, by the way. So 6,000 people, twin towns. It's right on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. So you didn't get much privacy. So why is a country boy from outback Australia talking about global marketing and building brands on a worldwide basis? Done a few things after that. So for the last 20 years, I've basically been bouncing around the world. 7 years in Hong Kong. I spent 3 years in Silicon Valley. Did business for about 10 years, popping between China, Seoul, Tokyo. And that's given me the opportunity to really experience a lot of different cultures. One thing that I took away from my stints in all these different places is that regardless of how much I thought I knew about these cultures and the people and the markets before I actually lived there and worked there, culture can't be taught. It has to be experienced. So having the opportunities to immerse myself in all of these different cultures has kind of given me a little bit more additional perspective, opened my eyes in terms of, hey, demographically, these people look the same. They're in their mid-30s, early 20s. They're male. They should like these kind of games. They should like these kind of systems. But the fact of the matter is how they interpret the same things, right, presented in different ways is completely different. So different cultures will respond to the same mechanics, to the same artistic styles, to the same marketing in extremely different ways. So for the past 10 years, I've actually been in Beijing. So a few more people there, roughly about 35 million, just north of the entire Australian population by about 20–30%. So big extremes from a 6,000 person outback Australia town to Beijing in China. So this presentation is going to be divided into 3 sections. And for the marketers here that are responsible for promoting, launching, sustaining, finding ways to get new users for your game, you're in the right place. Who did Marketing 101 in university? Show of hands. Okay, not that many of you. So Marketing 101 was actually a course that I took just to get extra credit so I could graduate. So I actually specialized in IT and international finance, and oh, Marketing 101, it's a nighttime slot, let's take it. But what I found was the lessons that I learned from Marketing 101 have been applicable to every endeavor that I've done pretty much for the last 20 years. And especially so for games marketing, mobile games marketing, PC games marketing. It gave me the right concepts and philosophies via which I could actually relate to my audience. I've actually put my own slightly different spin on it, especially for mobile and PC marketing. Oh, another question before we get started. How many of you are mobile games developers versus PC? Mobile? Awesome. We love PC games developers as well, but the examples that we're using in this presentation are primarily mobile. We are actually going to have another session, especially for the PC developers, right after mine. And so we do love you. There will be more, but a lot of the lessons, hopefully, or the examples from this session will be applicable for PC games marketing as well. The numbers might be slightly smaller, so if you're able to get your PC game to 100 million players worldwide, you're printing cash. So, you know, maybe you can give me a job after this. But even achieving a tenth of that, right? 10 million players on a PC game, phenomenal results, right? So hopefully some of the concepts, some of the examples that I'll be sharing with you will help you in your endeavors. Okay, so kind of my philosophy of 1 + 4 Ps for mobile games marketing. And again, applies to PC games marketing or other products, right? The first P is the most important. It all starts with the people. Who is your audience? How many people know Matt Hall and Andy from Hipster Whale? A few of you. Okay, so Matt was the creator, Matt and Andy were the creators of a game called Crossy Road, which many of you may have heard of. It's done extremely well, but Matt and I have been good friends for a long time, and one thing he shared with me is his first rule and philosophy for designing games is that he creates and envisions a game for one person. And then he takes that one person and kind of starts to understand what that person looks like, how that person likes to play a game, what kind of game they like to play, how they discover their games, how they share the games that they're playing with other people around them, right? So, and when you have a really, truly deep understanding of that one person you're building a game for, then you go from there, right? If you get the first P wrong, everything else that you do after that likely is going to be wrong, right? So if you know, your game is really for a mid-30s male that likes League of Legends, right? And you build something which is very kid-centric, it doesn't matter how good your other 4 Ps are, right? Your product, your price, your promotion, it's just not going to sell, right? So people provide you with the fundamental context for determining product, place, promotion, and price. Get the first P wrong, everything else really doesn't matter. So the first example we're going to start with is a little game called Ski Safari. It's a relatively old game. We partnered with Defiant Development, so Morgan, Dan from Defiant Development. I reached out to him about 6 years ago. I actually found Ski Safari on the App Store, $2 US dollars premium download. Played it, loved it, right? And then at that point in time, I was just starting up Yoda 1. And we were looking for great Western games that we thought would do well in China. Okay, and what we found was that Ski Safari was a great game for that age, right? So it was on par in terms of fun, polish, gameplay as the Angry Birds, Fruit Ninjas of the world. But the fact of the matter is, it never really did very well there, right? In the first year when they launched as a premium product, it got 35,000 downloads in China. I mean, not bad considering the time, but not great, right? It's not something that was world-shattering. So we started taking a look at, okay, why did such a good game not do anywhere near as well as comparable games on the market, right? And what we discovered was, you know, back then, Ski Safari was a great game, but it didn't have the right Ps for the Chinese market. Right? So the way that the game was structured, the way that the game was distributed, it was completely against you know, the market price, promotion, place, etc., for the Chinese market. So what we did when we sat down with Morgan and Dan from Defiant was, we said, hey, let's redefine your Ps, right? Well, actually, I didn't say it that way, but yeah, that's what I meant. So let's redefine the 4 Ps for the Chinese people, right? So what we wanted to do from a product perspective, we really looked at what we fell in love with when we looked at Ski Safari was the core gameplay, right? The way it felt when you were doing somersaults on the ski slopes, the way it felt when you caught a penguin, when you caught a yeti, right? The pace of the game. That was something we felt was the heart and soul of the game and absolutely couldn't be changed. So that's something we left alone, right? Preserve the core product heart and soul that really differentiated the product. And in Ski Safari's case, we felt it was the core gameplay. But that said, we thought that a lot of polish elements could be much more well adapted for the particular Chinese audience that we were targeting, right? Is there something with the art style that we can change, we can enhance, that would make it more popular for the Chinese audience? Is the game systems, the progression, right? Can that be, again, adapted so that it's more familiar to a Chinese casual game player? Right? More importantly, though, was really the place in the promotion. Right? So back then, Ski Safari was available on iOS App Store, and it was on Google Play. So automatically, half the market was irrelevant because Google Play didn't have access to the Chinese market back then. Right? And even with the App Store back in those days, most of the market was dominated by jailbroken devices, and the reason wasn't because Chinese players didn't want to pay for games or apps. The main reason was none of them knew how to set up an iTunes account. So the process back then for Chinese iPhones users and iPad users to set up an iTunes account, one, it was like a 20-page survey, right, that you have to go through and click through, right? And second is that in order to be able to purchase from their iTunes account, they had to buy a payment method. And that payment method, they only accepted foreign credit cards, which no one in the market had. Right? So when you have ecosystem constraints like that, right? So even if everyone wanted to play your game, 99% of the audience that were using iPhones couldn't anyway because they couldn't bind an iTunes account, they didn't have the payment method, right? So obviously all of these things are fixed with iOS right now, right? So I think iOS, both iPhone devices as well as iTunes Store revenues, China is now Apple's biggest market. They've actually fixed all of the issues that they initially had when they were entering the market. But, you know, that's why premium games back in those days were having so much problems, right? People wanted to buy them. They couldn't. So one of the things that we did was, hey, let's make this game free to play, right? But when you're making the game free to play, you got to make it and design it in a way that it's natural for free to play, right? So we're going to make it for free download. How do we actually make money, right, and continue to sustain the game? So we redesigned the meta game. We actually created a lot more new content, vanities, upgrades, new characters, new maps that the players could buy. And then we also expanded the distribution to about 300 app stores on Android in China. So the result of that, let me just show you a quick video of kind of a summary of the last 4 to 5 year evolution of what the product changes look like for Ski Safari. Looks a bit different from the original Ski Safari, right? So those numbers are a little bit outdated. I actually did the same session a year ago at GCAP. 5 years, 300 million downloads right now. So as you can see, even for a 5-year-old game, we're still driving about 3 to 5 million new players every month, right? So if you do it right, a game can have legs. A game can be a sustaining brand and IP. Let me give you a few statistics and numbers on how Ski Safari has performed and continues to perform. There's something called the Baidu Index in China. It's basically like your Google search index. It's a fairly representative representation of your brand equity, right? So if you have a product, you have a brand, you have a game, and you want to see how many people regularly search for this, right? Or actually find your game and IP. You go and look up your Baidu Index. Ski Safari's Baidu Index on a consistent basis has been higher than Iron Man's in China. So if you look at Iron Man, the Avengers, Thor, all of these Marvel IPs, they're extremely popular in China, right? And for an indie game from Brisbane, Australia, developed by a small studio at the time, defined as more significant in size now, it's not a bad achievement, right? They've done extremely well. China now represents about 95+% of the entire user base for Ski Safari. So what's more in the market, besides the product changes, right? So 4 Ps, right? We changed the product. You saw a kind of a snippet video of some of the changes we made. We changed the way we promote the product, right? We changed the pricing, right? So from a premium game to free-to-play, from Google Play and iOS to iTunes free-to-play plus 300 Android app stores, right? What we also did was change the way we promoted the game, right? So in most Western markets, right, a lot of the promotion and marketing kind of centralizes around how do I get more visibility on the App Store. It could be the iTunes App Store, it could be the Google Play App Store. But back in those days, what we found was, as we launched Ski Safari into the market, we found that an extremely large number of players, particularly on the Android side, was finding our game through search rather than App Store discovery, or rather than purely App Store discovery. So we went out and did a lot of things to optimize our SEO. So we basically we plastered every game review site with Ski Safari reviews or Ski Safari playbacks. We went out and did a lot of cross-promotion with other games' websites and cross-linked Ski Safari with those websites. We went out and did programs with each of the Chinese Android app stores, right, and made sure that they created content that would help boost our SEO and our meta tags. And the result is, if you search on ski, the Chinese words on ski, first thing that pops up is actually Ski Safari. It's not ski equipment, it's not ski resorts, it's Ski Safari. If you look at the right-hand side, so this is just Baidu search, right? So the Baidu search engine is basically the Google equivalent in China. Right-hand side, you immediately get download links to the game itself. And that's how we continue to sustain 4 to 5 million downloads after 5 years, right? So another key aspect of building and when I say build your game into a brand, right? A lot of mobile marketers these days, whether it's ad network, whether it's marketing agencies, the majority of the focus that they place today is on burst marketing, right? How do you do your launch properly? How do you get the initial visibility, right? And a lot of times it's how do you brute force it so that you break through the noise during your initial launch, right? But for those of you that have tried burst marketing, I'd like to say that burst marketing, we use it all the time as well, but it's only step 1, right? It gives you your initial visibility. How do you sustain it over 5 years? Right? You can't afford to burst for 5 years. You literally go bankrupt, right? Particularly for casual games. If you're doing a big burst campaign, it could cost a cheap one, maybe $100,000 US, an expensive one, several hundred thousand, maybe $1 million, right? You can't afford to do that, right, over a long period of time. If you got a really good game that monetizes really well, you could do a big one during launch, but you'll have to find better ways to sustain beyond your initial burst and launch, right? And from a product side perspective, there are a lot of things that you can do to help with that sustaining, right? When we work with our partners, one of the things that we're very religious about is that you got to have an update for your game every 4 to 6 weeks. Optimally, at least once every 8 weeks. And there's a very valid marketing reason for that. One, you want to re-engage your players, right? If a player has played your game and they don't see anything new come up for longer than 4 to 6 weeks, right, they probably leave. They probably want to find another game that has new content, right? Keep them entertained. But one of the most important reasons is it's a great excuse to go back to your App Store contacts, your App Store partners, right? And especially if you're looking at markets like China that has several hundred App Stores, right? You can continuously go back to different App Store partners and say, hey, we got this new update, we got new content, let's do a promotion around it, let's do a competition around it, right? Keeping it fresh, right, for both players as well as your distribution partners helps to ensure that you sustain your visibility on feature. And when I say, take a look at your product, take a look at your 4 Ps, you don't do it once. You have to keep doing it, like every month, every quarter. So we've had quite a number of iterations, probably 20 to 30 different versions and updates of Ski Safari over the last 5 years. It continues to do well. We're actually thinking about what else can we do to leverage this IP into this future. So the Defiant guys, actually, after we did Ski Safari together, it was quite a financial success for both parties. What they've done, actually, is said, thank you very much. We're going to take that money. We're going to go back to making real games. So after Ski Safari, the Defiant guys went back and hunkered down and made Hand of Fate. Who's heard of Hand of Fate? Right? Okay, quite a number of you. So great game on the PC side. And then they actually came back to us like 2 years ago and said, Hand of Fate's done really well in the Western markets, but we can't get into China. So for those of you that are PC games developers and want to hear more about what we did with Hand of Fate and some other pretty cool Aussie games on PC, next session. So one of my colleagues is actually presenting on PC marketing. Okay. So that's the story of Ski Safari. It was very China-focused. We're going to talk about something more on the global basis now. The second case study I'm going to use is with Crossy Road. And with Crossy Road, we're actually going to drill down a lot more on the promotion aspect of the 4 Ps, right? Okay. As I highlighted before, right, if you want to build a game into a brand and you want to break 100 million players worldwide, right? And why I use the number 100 million, that's really the starting point for building a global brand, right? With the size of the mobile games or the gaming market in general, until you get close to or actually break through the 100 million player mark, your brand recognition simply is not going to be significant enough to sustain over the long term, right? So Ski Safari, in China in particular, has become kind of a national brand, right, with 300 million people that have played the game over the past 5 years. Crossy Road, I think, should have broken 300 million worldwide as well. The game was launched initially in 2014. We were the co-publishers together with Hipster Whale. So Matt and Andy founded Hipster Whale. They publish themselves on iOS. Yoda One publish on all the other platforms, including Google Play, Windows, PC, etc. But we'll walk through some of the process about, okay, how do we create that initial burst that gets us that visibility to the top? How do you sustain it over time? And then how do you translate that brand momentum, right, and kind of turn that game into an IP that is worth more than the game itself. Okay, so going back to Matt's rule of making games, right? Make a game for one person. So if we look at Crossy Road as a game, what's that one person look like, right? So if you had to use one word to describe it, it's pretty much young, right? So Crossy Road game mechanics, the theme, the character design, the art style, the entire construct of Crossy Road is targeted at a very young audience. And what we found with Crossy Road, that the age demographic stretches all the way down to your 4 to 5 year olds that have kind of just known how to play mobile games, right? All the way to young adults, well, not quite as old as myself, but probably in the early to mid-20s, right? So it was extremely popular among that demographic when the game launched in 2014. So if we've defined the younger generation and younger audience as a primary P for Crossy Road, how do these people find their games? How do these people play their games? How do these people virally propagate what they like and how they're playing it, right? So one of the things we found when we launched Crossy Road in 2014 is that, surprising to us as well, the game did really well in the Western markets, right? US, Australia, English-speaking European countries. But one thing that really surprised us was Crossy Road popped all the way to the #1 spot for free downloads on Google Play, and it stayed there. So I was opening up the Google Play App Store in Korea when we launched the game, and it's like a sea of local Korean MMORPGs, ARPGs, and there's a chicken right at the top. It's like, what the fuck, right? So we got there, we stayed there, and we're happy about it, but you know, it was really time to sit down and think about, why did we get there, right? And how can we stay there? So we were literally the only foreign game at that time that were on the top charts. So we did a lot of research, we Googled a lot, we called our friends in Korea and said, why are we up on top, right? And why are we not moving downwards? Like, you know, yeah, we got a nice feature spot, but you know, feature spot doesn't last 50 days. What we discovered was a very popular boy band called BTS, Bangtan Boys. Who knows BTS? Okay, I had no idea who they were, so not my age demographic, right? But they're extremely popular, and so some of the BTS guys really like Crossy Roads, and they started tweeting their high scores of Crossy Road. So immediately, their entire fan base started downloading and playing Crossy Road, and as we charted, the organics grew. Their fan base started tweeting their, you know, high scores to kind of show off to hopefully, you know, their idols. So when we discovered that, we thought, okay, let's do something special for the BTS guys to thank them. We sent them chickens. So when we sent them chickens, they tweeted the chickens again, right? So again, we got another secondary burst, right? If you think about the ROI on this, so by the way, everything I talk about in this presentation, it's not going to cost you millions of dollars to do, right? It's stuff that with some creativity, thinking, and hard work, any indie developer or any small publisher can achieve this kind of impact, right? It cost us a few $100, right? But we got a couple of million downloads out of this exercise, right? So the sustaining came after we discovered BTS and sent them chickens. They retweeted their chickens. Okay, and then we thought that now, since we've kind of got our initial burst traction in the Korean market, what else can we do to sustain, right, and to kind of grow Crossy Road into a brand in the Korean market? And by that time, you know, Crossy was very popular in Korea, but was also very popular in pretty much all of the English-speaking Western countries as well. So we thought, if we were going to partner with a celebrity, right, or a well-known personality, who should it be? Someone that was representative of the Koreans, so, you know, really to give our note of thank you for the Korean market, but also appealing to the rest of the world. And at that time, we could only think of one person. It was really Psy, right? So a Korean celebrity that was very well known worldwide because of his silly dance. And we also looked at Psy and we thought, from personality perspective, Psy pretty much personifies what Crossy Road is about, right? So it's very young, it's very fun, it's silly at times, but his target demographic was very similar to the target demographic that we wanted to reach as well. So we literally cold called Psy's agency and said, hey, we make a fun little game called Crossy Road. We'd love to have you in it. What we actually found, to our pleasant surprise, was Psy already played the game. He loved the game, and he wanted to be part of it. So we decided to do something special, right? Instead of just saying, Psy, I'm the spokesman for Crossy Road, right? We wanted him to be very involved in the development of content that would make it fun for him to participate. So here's what we did.
Hello everybody. I have a big surprise for you. The makers of the game Crossy Road, 길 건너 친구들이죠. Eddie and Matt, they put my Gangnam in their game and they put me in the middle of it. So literally, I'm starring as a new character in Crossy Road. Crossy Road, wow. Oh yeah. Also, I recorded all the game sounds in the game by myself, for myself. Wow. Please enjoy playing this game and please enjoy playing me in this game. Thank you.
Pretty cool, huh? So just the promotional trailer that Psy made with us got 6.5 million views on YouTube. And that's on our channel. So there was a lot more on his channel when he actually tweeted it as well. So, and the gameplay was great, was fun. Because he liked the game so much and he liked what we were doing with it so much, he didn't charge us, a huge amount of money. So it wasn't cheap, but it didn't break the bank. And we actually made our money back in about 6 weeks. So yeah, so it was a great deal all around. He was happy with it. We actually brought a lot of Crossy Road fans to his site and vice versa. So, adding that additional amount of creativity and work and making sure that, a partnership is not just commercial, right? It actually represents and personifies what both parties are trying to achieve. That can pay dividends, right? So, that was specifically more for the Korean market. It also did well in Western markets as well. But at that time, Crossy was still a growing brand, right? We had some brand recognition, but we were not quite there yet as the global brand for casual games, right? So we kind of sat down and thought about, okay, how do we get there, right? Who are the other global brands in the world that are recognized by the audience that we want to reach instantly, right? So, you kind of think about, if you think about a brand like Mattel, right? What do? Toys, right? So their audience is very apparent, right? It's kids, right? Or kids at heart, right? If you think about the brand Transformers, right? Who are their audience? Boys? Yes, but they're actually got a more varied audience. It's young boys and it's old boys like myself, right? So it's actually two very different generations. It's the generation that knows the Transformers of today, whether it's from the toys or from the movies, and it's kind of like the G1 generation, right? That grew up with the Transformers in the 80s, 90s, whatever it is. Right? So what we wanted to do was look at brands in the market that had, absolutely amazing reach with the young generation. And we actually partnered with GCAP and YouTube to create something really fun. So what happened was that GCAP, they do a lot of advertising, obviously, But the one thing about Nestle and Kit Kat, the team and the creative agency there is that they always want to do something different, right? I mean, Kit Kat is a decades-old brand, but they keep reinventing themselves so that they keep appealing to the latest generation of consumers that are young, right? That are going to consume copious amounts of chocolate, right? So what we did with Kit Kat was we thought, what if we made, well, obviously our brands were trying to reach the same audience. So what if we created something cool that everyone wanted to look at and then just say sponsored by Kit Kat, right? Instead of trying to create an advertisement for Kit Kat and just licensing them the Crossy IP, let's do something really special, right? Let's do something real that is going to virally propagate. So what the creative agency for Kit Kat did was, we're working with them and we said, wouldn't it be cool if we turned Crossy Road into kind of like a real life set, right? So that you can compete in real life dressed as a frog and a chicken. So they actually contracted two of the top game influencers in the UK because this was actually, it was a European ad. It was a European team from Kit Kat that was doing this. So they got Toby Jizzle and another YouTuber. I think combined they probably had about 5 million subscribers, viewers on their game channels. We made them compete.
What?
Crossy Road.
Come on. Let's see him go. He's hey, you can't go backwards. What are you doing? You can't go backwards. There we go. He's struggling. Oh! He's made the jump. Hit him with the bird. Hit him with the bird. Hit him with the bird.
There goes the eagle. So that's a snippet from the video that we created. 10 million views. That was actually, it's actually more than that now, but in the first 5 months when that video came out, it got 10 million views, right? So if you think about it from our perspective, extremely cool, right? So we just got access to a completely new, different audience, 10 million views on YouTube. If you think about it from Kit Kat's perspective, right? An ad with 10 million views on YouTube, awesome, right? And the fact of the matter is we, instead of kind of charging them money and licensing the Crossy Road IP to them to create an ad, right? Doing something this way, right, costs us nothing, costs them very little money, to be honest with you. And at the end of the day, we had something that created a lot of value for all parties involved, right? It was great exposure for the game. It was great exposure for Kit Kat. It was great exposure for the YouTubers that kind of participated in this exercise as well. So the takeaway here is, if you want to create something that has outsized impact for the investment, right? Think about your audience. Think about the really successful brands that have influence over your audience, and then reach out to them, right? Can we do something cool together that is going to change the dynamic of just spending another $1 million, right, to promote your brand, right? Let's create something new that's going to be interesting to the audience and the people that we're targeting. A few other kind of cool brand things that we've done. So the escalators that you're seeing there, that's London Metro subway. Google Play was doing their own brand ads, and they used the Crossy Roads characters in there to help kind of personify the different personalities that Google Play apps and games represented. So they had those in the subways. They had a huge banner advertisement. I think it's that one there. That's Waterloo Square in London. We did another one with Samsung. Was Times Square in New York, big TV, when Samsung was launching I think it was Samsung, I can't remember which model, but it was big launch for them. It was great exposure for us. But again, right, so there are a lot of things that we can do with global brands and established brands that are targeting the same audience, that it's a win-win for both parties. And obviously, the biggest brand for young people in the world, right, Disney. And when Matt and Andy and the Hipster World team kind of pulled down this deal with Disney, right, it was huge in terms of sustaining and growing the Crossy Road IP, right, and further kind of cementing it as a global brand. Okay. Again, these numbers are out of date by about a year. They're probably closer to 250 million today. But, you know, the same rule applies. Keep the content fresh and update every 4 to 6 weeks. If you can manage it, 8 weeks at the most, right? Okay. Next section, I think I'm running a little bit late. We got 10 minutes. I'm going to rush through this a little bit. Who's played Rodeo Stampede? A lot of people. Great game. So we actually met with a featherweight team 2 years ago today. 2 years ago at GCAP. So we kind of, so we signed up with them. Again, a small but extremely talented indie team. There were 3 people. Right, so Matt, Dylan, Tim, and Dan, and we thought they had something really special that, you know, we could actually grow again into a global brand. So when I actually did this talk last year, everything was still a work in progress. We just launched Rodeo Stampede. It was nowhere near 100 million players at that time, but so my promise was to come back again this year. Right, and hopefully we were broken the $100 million player mark. So we saw Rodeo Stampede as well as an opportunity for us to kind of try a lot of new things. One thing about games marketing and marketing in general, but more, you know, especially for our industry, right? Marketing gets old pretty quick. So what you do today, you know, it's probably going to be old 3 months down the track. So. What I'm sharing with you today is all of the stuff that we tried that worked, right? If I was going to share with you all the stuff that we tried that didn't work, right, you'll be here to probably for the next 2 days, right? So keep trying. You know, if you fail, if you try something and it doesn't work, doesn't matter, right? So be creative, be adventurous, right? Keep experimenting. So what we wanted to do, though, was, so back then when we launched Rodeo Stampede, this was a little bit over a year ago. So I think we first launched in Western markets, so on iOS and Google Play on June 28th of last year. And then we launched in the China markets in late August. But what we wanted to do, so back then was influencer marketing was all the fad. Right? If you're going to launch a game, you're going to find the right influences, or you're going to find a bunch of influences. So we sat down, we thought about, okay, yes, we'll do influencer marketing, but how can we do it so it has outsized impact, right? Instead of trying to compete with everyone else and all the big boys that are paying a lot of money to do influencer marketing, how can we do it better, right? Or how can we do it more creatively? Okay, so I kind of preempted myself. So we did hit 100 million, by the way. So in fact, we've broken 100 million. We're at 105 million today. So a little bit over a year, about 15 months. I'll tell you a little bit about how we kind of got there. So Rodeo Stampede's the 3rd game that we've taken over the 100 million download mark. Hopefully, we'll be able to do more in the future. But some of the things we did, right? So I'm going to talk a lot about influencer marketing in a bit. But the first thing we wanted to do was, hey, how can we do something differently, right? Every game we launch, it's, okay, here's what we know, and we know it'll work, but the chances are it won't work as well as the last time, right? There's going to be some depreciation in terms of the effectiveness because, you know, once we do it, a lot of other people are going to start copying it, right? And, you know, as a consumer, you become immune to the same kind of marketing techniques that people use. So we decided to do some new things. So for our China launch, PC games, particularly in Japan and Korea, have kind of proven this technique that when you launch a game, you let all of your players know about it 3 months, 6 months beforehand, and then you open up pre-registrations maybe 30 days or 60 days before the actual game launch, right? So really kind of like building up a stockpile of players that's going to download your game on day one to get your burst momentum, right? That was actually something back when we launched Rodeo Stampede that wasn't a common practice for mobile games launch. And a main reason was you can't really do it effectively, right, with Apple or Google, right? A lot of times it's like, okay, keep everything quiet until launch day, right? And if you get everything right, you get a feature, right? But very few games developers, publishers kind of go out and say, hey, big launch in 90 days, start pre-registering. And there's also, you know, a lack of mechanics for you to do that effectively. Right? So what we did was we reached out, when we did our China launch, we reached out to Tencent, which is one of the bigger app stores in China, and we said, hey, let's do a pre-order registration. So in 30 days, we actually got 600,000 pre-order registrations for Rodeo Stampede, right? So even if, 20% of these people download on launch day, it's 120,000 new players just from one app store on launch day, right? Great for burst visibility, right? We also then work with Tencent, and there is an organization, it's an NGO in China called Kepu, right? So it's kind of like a semi-government educational organization that likes to promote new technologies, new ways of educating the young on all manner of educational topics, right? It could be science, it could be biology, it could be mathematics. So we kind of pitched them in position that play Rodeo Stampede, learn about animals. And surprising thing, they bought it, right? So on Kofu's website, right, they were literally featuring a mobile game called Rodeo Stampede, right? Play Rodeo Stampede, learn about animals. And then when they went and did their road shows with Tencent and all of the big platform players in the market, it's like they had a booth showing Rodeo Stampede. So, you know, again, right, thinking out of the box, who is the audience that these partners want to reach? Are they the same as ours, right? And, you know, how do we find an in, right, to kind of get there? Because all of this stuff is, you know, pretty much free, right, marketing-wise. And then, who's heard of Oppo? Okay, a few of you. Oppo is actually now one of the hottest handset manufacturers, particularly for the younger generation, right? You know, their handsets look great. The cameras look awesome. They've got camera software that makes young girls look prettier. So you know, they're extremely popular with the young, right? So all of the young people, both boys and girls, they use camera software that kind of removes all the blemishes and whatnot. So all of the photos that you see, and they have it built in to their cameras, right? So extremely popular with the young folks. They have their own app store, right? So instead of using a third-party app store, when you buy an Oppo handset, it's preloaded with the Oppo app store. So we thought, hey, is there something cool we can do with the Oppo guys, kind of to change the dynamic as well and promote the game? So one cool thing about the Oppo team is that they like new ideas. And if you look at what they've done is they've kind of displaced all of the major handset manufacturers in literally the last 3 to 4 years and kind of become the premier smartphone brand in China for young people. And they didn't do it by standing still, right? So they were very innovative, very creative. They wanted to try new things. So we said, what if we took over your App Store splash screen? So so we literally, when you start up their App Store, we took over their splash screen, right? It's like prime real estate, and you don't use it as a feature spot. Why not? So we were the first game that took over the splash screen. And then when you go into an app store, right, so you got a lot of different feature spots, but they're all static most of the time. So we said, what if ours won't static? What if ours was moving, right? So we created an animated GIF that, you know, kind of kept annoyingly moving, right, when you entered the feature page. So, I mean, as a user, what do? You go into an app store, oh, there's a rocking giraffe with a cowboy on it. Let's click on it, right? So 400,000 downloads on launch day just from Opal, right? So I think we launched on August 25th on over 60 Chinese app stores, 1 million downloads on launch day. So that gave us our burst visibility, right? But again, right, it's not one thing that we do. We want to, with every launch, we want to try a lot of new things. You know, we'll do a lot of things that are proven. But, you know, you can hear about that from a lot of different places. So I'm not going to talk about it. But, you know, we want to try new things with every launch, right? With every sustaining campaign that we do. And just aside, so when you're launching a game globally, obviously, our preparations for global launches and local launches are completely different, right? So telling people to download your game in the Western markets looks like this. Telling your players how to download a game in China kind of looks like this. So, okay. I'm going to wrap up pretty soon, but the last thing I want to do is show you a quick video, right? We talked about influencer marketing, and I said, you know, we're going to do some things very differently to get outsized return on influencer marketing, right? Think about influencer marketing versus burst marketing, right? Burst marketing and charting is very much focused on how do I get my organic charting up to a certain point that I generate additional organic downloads, right? And for both iOS and Google Play, charts were typically at that time broken down by regions, right? So we said, let's do influencer marketing, but let's do it by region so that we can get a double whammy, right? And get the organic charting in each region as well. The bad news was we launched a week after Pokemon Go last year, so it was hard to break through the noise, right? We had to be more creative. But Think Noodles, we partnered with him for the Western regions, primarily US. But as you can see on the right-hand side, right, the organic uptick, as soon as we do the influencer marketing video, right, it's significant. This is D-Dottie in Korea, right? Again, this is 15-minute download intervals, right? As soon as the video went up on her channel in Korea, double the download velocity, right? That's how you can get the additional organic charting as well. Saudi Gamer single-handedly pushed us up to the #1 spot on the iOS charts in Saudi Arabia, right? So I'm going to show you another quick video. This is kind of a video collage of, you know, 30 YouTube influencer campaigns in 8
What is up,
different
guys?
languages.
My name is Tony, and today I will tell you a secret I've not told anyone before. I actually own a zoo! Believe it or not, and this is my zoo!
안녕 친구들. 나 먼저 갈게. 너네 너무 느리구나. 랄랄라. 오 부딪힐 뻔. 저기 뉴 있었는데 뉴. 야 잡았다. 이거 뭐야.
You get the idea, right? We got a few more languages down there. Okay, so the last part I'm going to leave you with is, okay, so we talked about a lot of things that you can do to promote your game outside of the game, right? But how can you turn your player base that's already playing your game into additional viral propagators, right? So we work a lot with in-game communities, right? So we've actually built a platform ourselves called KT Play, and that allows us to directly pull all the players inside of game into a single community, and then we can kind of influence them, right? We can run events, we can do campaigns, we can say, hey, share this to your Facebook page or your Twitter. And when you have the ability to do that, right? When you have the ability to aggregate every single player inside your game into one community, right? And interact with them in real time and influence them, what you can do with them or what you can influence them to do is only limited by your imagination, right? So we've tried a lot of different things. Some worked, some don't. Some work well in some games, but don't in other games. But, you know, we ran a campaign in Rodeo Stampede. It was like every time you catch a new animal, right, hit this button to share it to your WeChat or your Facebook, whatever. We did that with the in-game community. We ended up getting about 160,000 shares over 3 days, right? And the competition was actually, share it, get 10 likes from your friends, right? And we'll give you a prize. So with 160,000 shares, getting 10 likes each, right? The exposure you're creating from your player community becomes significant, right? And then we did T-shirt competitions. We basically, after you're updating your game every 6 weeks for a year, right? Hey, what else do the players want? Let's ask them, right? We do a poll every now and then. It's like, okay, here's the next 3 sets of updates or new animals or contents that we want to create. Go vote for it, guys, right? Or fanfic. Is there something that you think is really cool that we think we should put into our game, right? Having the ability to directly interact with your players in real time and having the tools to very quickly tally, a lot of input very quickly, amazing, right, for continuing to sustain your game. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with, quick video. I'm going to show you. But again, so Think Noodles, we used him for launch. He was great. And then a year later, we wanted to we had a big update coming out. It was the prehistoric update. So instead of animals, we now have dinosaurs. So we wanted, again, to do something very different. By that time, Think Noodles had grown significantly, right? He's got 2.5 million subscribers. So, he's now charging, real bucks for influencer videos. So instead of going to him and saying, hey, can you do another kind of video for our big update, it was like, how can we work together to do something interesting that's going to bring you more subscribers and it's going to be fun for our players? So we brought him into the game. So we pulled Think Noodles into the in-game community and we made him ride a raptor to see how far he could ride it without changing animals. And then we basically said to all the players, compete. Right? You beat this guy, we'll give you great prizes. So I'm gonna
also
leave you with the last video here.
Let's be Velociraptor. Now, the developer had an idea that on their KT Play in game thing that they wanted for me to give a challenge, and that challenge is to ride a raptor as far as possible. All right, guys, so here is my best run for the Raptor Run Challenge. And I just wanted to hit a certain milestone, and I finally did it after way, way, way too long. Some of you guys will beat this on your very first try, I am sure.
Was not just
so, guys,
YouTube,
the prizes for this Raptor Run
gets
Challenge
into the
are
game,
anyone who enters will win a limited edition Chinese New Year Gorilla, and anyone who beats my high score will win an energy pack too, and the top 50 cowboys or cowgirls who run the furthest will get a...
For time constraints, right? You kind of get the idea, right? So, and creating a campaign like that, which, at that time when we were running, I think we had about 500,000 DAU on Rodeo Stampede on iOS. So it was a great opportunity for Think Noodles to kind of get access to our audience as well, right? Because we're bringing him in game. So we were able to negotiate his price down about 80%, right, to do this. So, yeah, you do have to spend money to market a lot of times, but if you're creative, right, and you find a way to partner with influencers, brands, other people that can get you access to that audience in an effective way that's cool for both parties, you get a much better deal. That's it. I'm completely out of time. If you have any questions, feel free to come and grab me. And then my colleague has the next section. He's looking very impatient at me right now. So, thank you.